What's up, YouTube perverts? Welcome back to another episode of AM Training. It is week 2 of the second block, and this week is usually where I AMRAP, like some squat or some bench. I did end up with a 8 rep on the high bar of 385. Don't know if that's a PR or anything. I've only incorporated high bar maybe, I don't know, like 3 times in my life after I learned low bar, because I was a good strict high bar-er, I think that's the word. I did high bar for probably a good 6 years of my training, so half of my training was, concentrated on high bar until I found the golden low bar, because it's really good for me, because I feel like my back isn't my strongest suit, and it just kind of reduces that moment arm being the perpendicular distance between your hips and the weight. So if you have it lower on your back, then your back doesn't have to work too much, but you are kind of, it's a give and take, so it depends on your I was gonna say anthropometry, but I'm not gonna get fancy with the words. It depends on how you're built, so I'll keep it simple. Bench is feeling great. I think it's all due to BFR. I just had a nice little bro sesh, and bench felt great and even, and my radial nerve isn't giving me too much problems. I think I'm able to flex my long head of the tricep now, but I'm gonna keep this video short because I will play all my training throughout this whole commentary that I'm doing now. So after that, I'm gonna get a little lazy, and I'm just gonna put one of my clients, one of my newer clients' video analysis here. Since I'm already making a video analysis this week, I might as well just put it in here and be a little lazy, because I did promise that I'm going to upload YouTube at least once a week. So even though life is kicking my ass, I can still have you guys watch weekly kicking my ass. So anyways, train hard, train smart, and continue to keep watching this video for the video analysis of my newest client. I think he was originally from Joey Flex, and he just wanted to have some AM coaching. So train hard, train smart. What's up, Matt? This is Al, the sexiest coach you'll ever have, because I can't claim the strongest, because you've been coached by Joey Flex before, and that guy is a strong mofo. Let me start off by saying I do appreciate you choosing me as a coach, because that warms my heart. I'm always humbled and grateful for the opportunity that you clients give me, because I love this shit and this is fun. And if I didn't have to put myself through physical therapy school or feed my family, I'd do this shit for free, because again, this shit is fun. So let's look at your squat. Let's look at your squat. This is Coach's Eye, of course. You follow me on YouTube and IG, so you know that I do these things just so that you can see what I'm seeing, and then possibly make it a little bit easier than me writing a whole paragraph of what needs to be done. So there are a couple things in your squat. I don't know if it's a couple things, but things that stand out to me the most with your squat, and why. Because you're coming to me with not only just like a plateau in strength, but also back pain. So I do appreciate you trusting me with that, because I know, I've herniated a disc, or I've had major back pain from deadlifting before, and it's depressing. So I know how it is. But let's get to it. So your squat, 1, 2, and the fix. I typically start off with what's the word I'm saying? Thinking of. I usually start off with counting the steps of how many times you walk out backwards, because that's easy, low-hanging fruit. If I fix that, as you're reducing the amount of fatigue that you're walking under or walking out, and it's just easy to kind of get into habit of minimizing your steps. But you do pretty well. Again, that's low-hanging fruit. I don't know if I like that saying, because it just sounds like low-hanging testicles for me for some reason. I guess that's just me and my giggity mind. But speaking of low-hanging testicles, you definitely you do have depth. This angle here is not the best, but later on in this video, you do send me a side video shot, and your depth is not an issue. What I do see as an issue is that you're butt winking. That's one of the things that I saw in all your videos. You saw me, I'm sure you got a lot of notifications of me liking all your 100 plus videos on IG. I just like to get a background and of all your training, even if it's like 2 years ago. So I was looking through all those videos, and it looks like that's a number one theme that you have. Now, I'm not saying that your back pain was caused by butt winking, especially if you do you fall into the Cartesian model of duality, where 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 you think pain is basically a sign of structural damage. Of course, we don't think that's always the case, because then you have the other side of the spectrum of the was it biopsychosocial model, which they are also teaching us at school, physical therapy school, but they kind of touch on it where sometimes pain isn't always indicative of structural damage, but possibly the environmental factors and stuff like that. I tend to fall in between both of those theories, because even though because they do teach us that sometimes with different movement patterns, you tend to see a pattern of injury. Now, just because you squat a certain way doesn't mean that you're going to be able to predict injury. Like let's say, give an example of your butt wink. If you're butt winking, or you're causing a lot of micro movement through your back, and is that going to cause injury because of your underload and you're going to herniate a disc or something like that? Now, I'm telling you these things because I'm making you aware of the possible false narratives that people give you, that I probably am guilty of giving people myself, that if you squat a certain way that you're going to snap your shit up. I'm just giving you the option of knowing about these things, because yes, that is a possibility, but there's always adaptation, and if you're squatting with butt wink, you probably adapted to it, and you'll be able to keep squatting, and just it's not a big issue. But again, I told you I do fall in between both of those theories, where back pain it's finicky. It's one of the things that are kind of researched a lot in the medical field, but with no exact answers, especially with being able to adapt to a certain stimulus like squatting or stress, because it's hard, because it's very individualized, especially with the biopsychosocial model. It's very individualized, where you have we can't measure how fast you adapt to something or how much you've adapted to something. So if you're butt winking every time you squat, that doesn't mean that you haven't adapted to it. But again, I am in the middle of those two theories, where I'm guessing where there's a certain amount of times you adapt to it. There's got to be like a camel, a tissue's a threshold of stress. So with that being said, sorry if that was a little bit long, but I just needed to get you on the same kind of boat as me, because we want to make sure that we're communicating. As your coach, I want to communicate to you, and I don't want to give you false narratives of things, and I just want you to expect things where expectations as your coach and as your friend. We're friends now. So I want to make sure that we're on the same page. With that being said, why even hire me as a coach, or someone to help out with your back pain, if I'm going to go maybe nihilistic on you, where your form doesn't really matter? Does anything really matter in the world anymore? With that kind of thinking, the reason why, let me go ahead and defend my or your decision to hire me, is that we can go ahead and fix things, as in fix your form so you're biomechanically efficient. When you're biomechanically efficient, then you're going to reduce the amount of stress that your tissues have to go through, because then the actual tissues that you're using then will be optimal, where they're meant to be loaded, they're meant to take on a certain weight. And also, with that being said, if you're reducing the amount of stress one tissue has, then you're lowering the threshold that it has to be even close to. Along with that, you're going to be more efficient in your big three lifts. So let's talk about being efficient in the squat, because again, when we have the squat here, I just kind of let this video play in the background while I ranted about biopsychosocial model, but let's look at your squat. So right here, again, so we talk about your butt wink because that's a lot of movement that's happening in your low back. You can see here that you kind of go into, especially toward the end of when you start to fatigue, you kind of like, okay, so look at that. Let's start marking up your back and everything. So that's where you tend to be right out of the hole. And then once you're in this position here, you tend to like to round. Of course, I'm exaggerating these things, these arrows here, or these lines, because I'm trying to show you the two extremes. So with that, from moving from here to here, or actually from here to here, that's a lot of micro movements. And if you follow Stuart McGill's stuff, all that micro movements during, or not even micro movements, that's a big amount of movements during that load. That's going to cause a lot of stress in those tissues. Again, do you have back pain because of the way you squat, or is it the way you deadlift, or maybe something in your environment is messing you up? So with that being said, we want to clear our mind and make sure that we aren't, we want to respect pain, but we don't want to obsess over it. So I'm going to progress you in a way where we're going to strengthen your core, and I hate saying the word core, but that is what it is. Pretty much your trunk muscles, in order to make sure we minimize that, along with some things here, because you're coming up on that squat. So what you tend to do is you like to stretch your hamstrings when you're coming up, because you're getting stable. You're trying to find stability in your hips and in your knees in order to drive that weight up. And as you fatigue more, I see it more and more often where you're kind of doing a Mark Ripito squat, where you're leading your hips up first in a arching motion. So with that, we need to fix that, because that's not biomechanically efficient. If anything, if we can just make your torso just this nice stiff rod, giggity-goo, then we'll be able to really transmit the force. Because if you're kind of flimsy and everything, it's like trying to play pool or billiards with a rope rather than a stick. You're just going to be limp. Or you could give another, example of trying to shoot a porno without Viagra. You're just not going to, you get the picture. Limp things are not good, and they don't transmit force really well. So you're trying to, let me draw a stick figure here where you're squatting, right? That's you. And so what you're trying to do is you're stretching out your hamstrings here in order to create stability. Stability that your low back is trying to find using its paraspinals. That's why you're in extension. So what happens is that you're trying to stretch that hamstring. It's not used to being in a shortened position and being strong in that position. It's kind of like how you're really weak in bicep curl toward the end of the curl, where you're having that like active insufficiency. Fancy words for how about this? How about we draw the length tension relationship of a muscle? We are strongest in here. That's usually like a midway of a curl, and we are weak right here at the top of a curl when the length is really shortened, and then we're really weak here when you're at the bottom of curl. And of course, gravity. Let's just take gravity out of the equation. So let's say we're doing cable curls again. So we're strongest here because that's the optimal length of. I don't know if I want to get more physiological on you, but where the sarcomeres are the sliding filament theory, where there's more overlap in how muscles work. So I'm not sure if you've taken biology before, but just take my word for it that this part is going to be your strongest part. So if your hamstrings are here, and you're trying to stretch them out in order to be here, you're trying to essentially create a length tension curve that you're that well you're I shouldn't say that. You're trying to make yourself be in this position, in an optimal position for your hamstrings to work in and kick in, but what you are tending to do is that you're sacrificing position to do it. And for me as your coach, what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to strengthen you in that shortened position. With that being said, prone hamstring curls are going to be the best thing for you, at least for your accessory work for your squats and your deadlifts. I'll show you why in your deadlifts that is going to be the reason why you need to do that as well for both of them. And so with that being said, you train in your garage. How are you going to do prone hamstring curls? Am I going to ask you to buy some crazy equipment that I've already asked you to buy because you already bought a trap bar deadlift, and also I think I had you buy an incline bench, and that's awesome that you bought both of those. So that's definitely motivating for me to write those in your program. For me, you would do Nordic curls. So Nordic curls are going to be, prone hamstring curls. The reason why prone and instead of sitting, or Nordic curls instead of like any other curls, is because when your hamstring is a two joint muscle, and so if we are extending, if we're let's use your body. So if here is your torso, and if it attaches on your ischial tuberosity all the way down to the your tibia, so if we are if your hips are straight, then your hamstrings tend to be shortened. And so if your hamstrings are shortened and you're doing curls in that position with your hips straight, then you're working that you're working that range right here. This is where we want to be. This is where we want to train and get you more stable. So again, that's going to be your one of your accessory lifts, or it might even be a separate day of your own, just because I feel like not only is that great for training your hamstrings, but possibly some core work and really getting your isometric strength. You're probably going to really suck at these, and you're probably going to hate me. You're probably even going to cramp up a little, but that's just part of the fun. Another reason why I'm trying to make this video short, but I don't know if you like explaining things. I do like explaining things myself, just because it makes me not as, stuttering Stanley at what I'm doing right now, just because I feel like in the world, when I become a physical therapist, I need to be able to explain this better than what I'm doing now. So if you don't understand this, that's my fault. I do take responsibility as your coach for if you're not understanding this. But another reason why the hamstrings are going to be important is because it's going to help you utilize your quads better in your squat. The reason why is Lombard's paradox. So the hamstring and the rectus femoris, those are two muscles of the legs that are two joints, and so they both are antagonists. And it's crazy because how are both of those muscles, even though in the squat you're extending the hip and you're extending the knee, those are two opposite things, but yet they work synergistically because of their internal moment arms. Let's see. Okay, so long story short, if your hamstrings are strong, then since they attach, let's do the stick figure again. Hopefully I can explain this better, and I don't know if you want me to explain it better. You're probably like, move on to the bench, but this is your money's worth, man. This is what you pay for. So let's say your hamstring is this blue line. Let's say you keep that line steady. So that's your muscle, your hamstring length. If you're strong in your hamstrings, then you'll be able to transmit the force, that the hip extension force, when your quads get stronger. So let me color coordinate this mother sucker. And so here's your quads in green. So if your muscles contract, then basically you're going to extend that knee, right? So if your muscles on your quads contract, it extends the knee. What's that going to do? And if your hamstring is going to be, if it stays the same length, then it's going to act as a hip extensor. So the way that it's, those are two opposite things, right? But yet they work perfectly together. So long story short, if your hamstrings are strong, it's going to help your quads extend your hip. I know, it's weird. It's all those things all put together. But again, those are the things that we're going to work on and also get you in a better position and help you not butt wink as much. Because if you're stronger in the bottom range of that hamstring or in that squat, hopefully you won't move your hips so much. Again, this is just the plan that I have in my head. And here's your 500-pound squat. This is pretty freaking solid. Yeah, let's watch it. Boom. And I love it. So it's crazy that, you're so upright. I feel like that might be, yeah, maybe I think you said you had back pain for this, so that might be why you're not using as much back. Hopefully we can go ahead and optimize that where we can use your back and your quads, because it's funny because when I first watched your squat video, I'm like, man, his quads are his strength. And then I watched your deadlift video, I'm like, ooh, his back might be his strength because his quads are given out. And it just made sense to me that your hamstrings that might be the limiting factor, because I'll get to your deadlifts later on. So moving on, I think I spent a good 15 minutes on just your squat alone, because I freaking love the squat. The bench press, it's pretty simple what to see here, at least for me, is that you love to use your pecs, and boom. Do you see that? Did you see that? You flared out your elbows prematurely, and that's just indicative of you, I think, not having good anterior delts strength or tricep strength. And so therefore that's why I wanted you to buy that incline bench, because if we close grip incline that motherfucker, I think you'll be able to do really well. Because not only did I see this in your competition video when you're getting heavy, but the videos where you show me like other angles or even the side angle. Here you're doing a nice light 185 with multiple reps. Notice how, let's slow-mo this. Your first like 3 or 4 reps are really good, solid, and then you start to get fatigue. Ooh, there. That's the fatigue happening with your triceps and anterior delts, and they're not contributing well. And what happens with that is that there's two things. There's a difference between efficiency and also just being kind of path of least resistance. So with you flaring out your elbows like that, that's just you going to the path of least resistance, meaning that you want to use your pecs, and your triceps aren't contributing as much. So if we get them up to par, that I feel like they're your weak link, and then not only will we have a better press, but the bar path is going to be a little bit more efficient, because usually I'm sure you've heard of powerlifting where they had that study with, I think even they looked at Bill Cos. Oh, why can't I think? Because it's like 12 o'clock at night, and I can't think. Bill Cos, the freaking strongman guy. So, I'm totally gonna feel stupid for not remembering his name, but yeah. Anyways, he had a bar path, and also elite powerlifters have a bar path of like that J pattern. Right now, in the beginning, you tend to have this kind of pattern right there. Let's go ahead and play this video. Yep, you see how you tend to have that pattern probably first 3-4 reps, but then you start to get fatigue, and then you start actually getting more efficient. So if we could get you efficient before you fatigue, that would be even better, because then we can utilize your strengths and utilize proper biomechanics. I think the 7th and 8th rep, I think that had to be the 7th rep, because it started to look like the more efficient bar path. There you go. That was the 7th rep. So more efficient bar path. The way we're gonna get that is close grip bench incline. The reason why close grip is because we can get your elbows. A little bit. So we want your elbows a little bit in front of or anterior than the bar path, than the bar, because then we can really kind of drive up. If we have your bar path kind of like how you had it, where it's like this in the very beginning, then it's hard to kind of get that biomechanically efficient bar path, and it's like straight up. Again, physics and biomechanics is different. We want to utilize the amount of muscles that we have. We want to use your delts in order to press, even though straight up is the most efficient, as in less amount of work. But it's not about the work, it's the amount of force that we can apply. So work is going to be the force times the distance. From point A to point B is the best way, is a straight line. But again, it's not physics, it's biomechanics. Okay, so let's move on to your deadlift, because I'm sure you want to know what you are doing here. So I think with this one you pulled 500 and you did it sumo, which is awesome because you weren't even training sumo. You just had back pain and you went for audible and you freaking pulled it out of your ass while eating ass, because you pull sumo, right? So let's see. Your hips rise up fast, and there you go. So, I'm not sure if you saw that, but your hips rise up fast. It's inefficient. I'm sure you know that. It's a max deadlift, and you weren't even practicing it really well. So, again, the skill isn't there, and we're going to fix that. We're going to utilize pause sumo deadlifts. It tends to be my favorite accessory just because it teaches you positioning. Positioning in sumo, it's all about patience, and if you can create that amount of tension off the floor, if you have your positioning sets the trajectory. So if you have a shit position to begin with, then your trajectory is going to be off. It's like freaking, playing Call of Duty and going sniper mode. I'm not talking about like quick shot or quick scope. I'm talking about if you set the trajectory right, as in you take your time and you shoot the target, then the end goal is, headshot kind of thing. But if it's, sloppy to begin with, then you're gonna freaking miss, and you're not gonna prestige. But yeah, that was kind of an old reference. I haven't played video games in a long time, so that's the dad life. Let's see. Okay, so in order to fix that, like I said, I think your hamstrings have a lot to do with it. Now, your back is going to be rounded, and I think that's you trying to reduce the amount of distance between your hips and your bar. But if we get your hips closer, I have two rules for sumo. We want them as close to the bar sagittally, meaning like your balls are over the bar or your hips are close to the bar while you're spreading the knees apart. But I also want them high. I want your hips high, because what that does is that you're going to reduce the moment arm of your quads, meaning that you're going to be in an advantageous position, because usually people can people can block pull more than they can deficit pull. So those two rules will get that worked out with pause deadlifts and working out those hamstrings. So why are hamstrings important? Because I think it comes down to creating that torque in order for your hamstrings to pull. So again, like I said, your hamstrings are attached to your ischial tuberosity, and that's just fancy words for your ass bone, and that ass bone is going to kind of set the trajectory. If you brace tight here, and you pull on that ass bone, then everything is going to move up at the same time. But if your if your hamstring is weak, then everything is going to collapse, because it's not utilizing that moment arm. It's not utilizing that pull on that sit bone that you have in order for you to go up. So hopefully that has been helpful. Again, long story short, with your squats, we're going to do, I didn't even say the accessory movement for the squats. Of course, we're going to squat, but we're also going to do, I think the best thing for you is, what's the word I'm gonna say, low bar squat with a ascending pause. The reason why we want an ascending pause is because you already go deep enough. I tend to have pauses right before you hit the hole, like descending pauses, when there tends to be, if you tend to be a little slow, if you tend to lose a little depth, if you tend to be, if you don't have that stretch reflex. The reason why I do kind of ascending pauses is to ingrain proper bar path and positioning, because usually what happens is that people tend to do a stripper squat where their hips rise up faster, and if you try to pause that, then you're gonna you're gonna be in a world of, not hurt, because I'm not trying to hurt you, but a world of learning fast that if you're not in the right position, it's gonna feel like crap. And so again, along with your squats, we're going to work on core strength. I'm going to progress you from shear force to compressive force to shear force, because that tends to be easier on the spine. Again, we're working on threshold. I don't want you to be scared of deadlifts, because that's, they call it, like movement apprehension. You're like kinesiophobia, where you're scared of a certain movement or lift. That's not what I want, because then that tends to, like, you'll look at the research, tend to be like chronic pain, and we're trying to stay away from chronic pain, because even though man, I am tired. There may not be any structural damage, but there is pain still, because again, your body is perceiving, or your mind is perceiving, that there's danger. If we kind of give you a gradual, I think it's I can't remember in psychology, the gradual exposure. That's what it is. So gradual exposure. If we continue to keep doing that, hopefully the brakes come off, and we'll hit those PRs. We'll be pain free. And if you don't have pain, then pain tends to inhibit strength, and you're gonna feel great. So that's it for your deadlifts. For sumo, you got the white lights. Your conventional, we'll let this play. We'll play around with this later, but again, it's the same pattern that I've been seeing throughout your squat and your sumo deadlift, is that your hips right there, boom, boom. So typically, I would just say, how about you start in that position to begin with, because this extra stuff right there, that's waste of time, that's waste of energy. You start in that position to begin with. But with that being said, we're also going to train you to be in this position to get those hamstrings stronger, so then it can transmit the quads stronger, so then your quads can actually contribute into hip extension. Again, those are weird kind of things to say in succession, but everything is interrelated. So yeah, let's just end it there, because I think I've been talking for a good maybe 30 minutes or so. So other than that, hopefully that has been helpful. Let me know if you have any questions. I will have your program ready once I write it up. Again, it does take me a good while to get this, because I don't do cookie cutter programs, and as you can see, this is my plan for everything, along with just getting you kind of core ready, core strong, because we want to transmit that force and be able to make our own brace, to make sure you don't snap your shit again. Anyways, train hard, train smart.